Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Divedi, and in this segment today we are going to talk about the effects or impacts of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Indian economy. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of GS mains papers. So let's begin with the first topic, that is, why is this in news? Now, according to the State of Economy report which is published by the Reserve Bank of India, it is being said that although it is still extremely tentative, the overall assessment is that the loss of momentum is not as severe as it was this time a year ago. That means the second wave has not as severe impacts as it was during the first wave of the COVID-19. And it has said that yes, the second wave has dented the economy right now, but not debilitated the economy. Alright, so let's move on and talk about the highlights of the State of Economy report of the last year. India has so far succeeded in ducking the second wave of COVID-19, and by the end of 2020, India has bent it like Beckham. That was said in the first State of the Economy report. The recovery rate in India has improved to 96.1%, which was then the second highest in the world. And the mortality rate was 1.4% lower than the world death rate of 2.2%. Remember, this was of 2020, alright. And merchandise imports finally emerged out of contraction over 9 consecutive months and grew by 7.6% year-on-year in December 2020. Bank credit demand was also seeing an upward trend at the pace above 6% and reversing a 5-month stretch of sub 6% growth. But let's talk about the current year's State of Economy report. Now, the overall assessment is that the loss of momentum is not as severe as it was this time a year ago, evidently because of the localized nature of the lockdowns, better adaptation of people to work from home protocols and online delivery models, e-commerce and digital payments these all were working in tandem to make the impacts or to mitigate the negative impacts of the COVID-19 second wave. See, if we talk about the first wave of the COVID-19, it was seen that a nationwide lockdown was imposed, which affected the worst affected areas equally if we compare them to the least affected areas. That means a lockdown, a single one-size-fit-all lockdown was for every place. That is why the economy got impacted on a very large scale. But this year, as compared to the last year, the nature was localized in nature. The lockdowns were localized in nature. Severely affected regions had heavy lockdowns, and not so severely affected regions did not see a very robust lockdown. And this year, as people drew their lessons from last year, they have much better adaptation when it comes to work from home through online portals. And other protocols like online delivery models, e-commerce and digital payments are of course being boosted because people are not going in the open market for buying something. You are also seeing a lot of emergence of hotels which provide you services such as Swiggy, Genie, right? So you can see that we are adapting much better than the last year if we talk about the current protocols. The RBI said real economy indicators moderated in April and May 2021 as many states imposed restrictions to arrest the renewed surge of infections. The biggest toll of the second wave is in terms of a demand shock. Why? Because loss of mobility, people are not moving a lot. Apple mobility and Google mobility also, it saw the trends that people were not moving very to and fro when it comes to the months of April and May. And discretionary spending and employment. That means if they want to spend, they can at least curb their wishes when it comes to the current times. They are curbing their wishes and they are buying things that are actually very necessary because they are of course anticipating a downtrend when it comes to salary and employment also. Besides inventory accumulation, people are hoarding things because they do not want to visit the market all the time, while the aggregate supply is less impacted, right? And on the global front, the RBI said a strong bounce back is being seen in the US economy. And that is going to put up the annualized growth rate of 6.4% in the Q1 of 2021 on the back of stimulus, vaccination and also easing of lockdowns. The British economy has also emerged out of lockdown. from the onset of Q2, and new surges of the virus have pushed the Eurozone into a double dip recession with widely differentiated growth profiles among its members. Moving on, now if we talk about widely differentiated growth profiles means the European Union, many countries are seeing their economies to be stagnant, some are seeing that their economy is on uptrend, many are seeing on a downtrend, so that is what it is saying. If we talk about U-shaped recovery, this state of economy report has said that we are witnessing U-shaped recovery. That means the economy, the GDP is going, this is the predicted GDP if COVID wasn't there. But what we saw, a downtrend and then an uptrend. This is actually slower than the V-shaped recovery. V-shaped recovery was talked in the economic survey, and here economy recovers but activity is permanently lost. And here, if we talk about the U-shaped recovery, here lies agriculture and here lies the IT sector, which are seeing these two sectors are not very impacted by the COVID-19. But if we talk about the plunged area of U-shaped economy, here lies certain sectors which need actually a lot of human interaction. They can only work perfectly when things are normal, such as manufacturing sector, which are labor intensive in sector. Those sectors lie here. Alright, let's move on and talk about the impacts of the COVID-19 on the economy right now. In the well of the EU, that means we have already discussed that, blue collar groups who have to risk exposure for a living and for the rest of the society to survive. Doctors and healthcare workers lie in the well of the EU, law and order and municipal personnel, individuals who are working for daily livelihood, living on scrape, small businesses, organized and unorganized sectors. So it's actually impacting those sectors. The RBI has said the effective reproduction number, that means the infectivity rate, the transmissibility rate, which is a key indicator of how fast COVID-19 infects people, is beginning to drop. Now it is beginning to drop. You see, COVID-19, the second wave, it came all of a sudden, sharply increased, and now it is seeing a sharp dip. This is the ferocious nature of the second wave of the COVID-19. Alright, and it is beginning to drop in India now. Moving on, let's talk about the Reserve Bank of India. It was established on April 1st, 1935, which had the accordance of the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. The central office of the RBI was initially established in Calcutta but was permanently moved to Mumbai in 1937. The central office is where the governor sits and where policies are formulated. Originally, it was privately owned, but after nationalization in the year 1949, it is now government owned, fully government owned. Its preamble says that RBI needs to regulate the issue of banknotes and keeping of reserves with a view to securing monetary stability in India. This is the primary nature of RBI. And generally to operate the currency and credit system of the country to its advantage, to have a modern monetary policy framework, to meet the challenge of an increasingly complex economy and to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. So if we talk about important publications, half-yearly in nature of RBI, Financial Stability Report, Monetary Policy Report and Report on Financial Review. Moving on, let's talk about the conclusion. Actually, localized lockdowns rather than nationwide lockdowns have been preferred in the second wave in order to balance the spread of infections versus the loss of economic activity. But the jury is out on which works and where. That means where this is very subjective in nature. When to put lockdown and when not to is very subjective in nature. Once the infection rises, it kills a lot of people, then comes the lockdown and then the death rate or the infection rate may fall, but here economic activity also falls down. The key lesson from the visitation of the second wave is to vaccinate, vaccinate and vaccinate. Vaccination is the only way out being seen here with COVID appropriate protocols. Alright. So let's move on to our main question. How have the localized lockdowns through the second wave of the COVID pandemic helped the economy to fare better as compared to the last year? You have to evaluate in 150 words. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.